Hello, my name is Beth Dixon, and we're going to do lesson 1, homework question number 15. In this one, there is a table, and we're going to fill in the missing parts of the table. In each line, you are given one form, and we're asked to write the equivalent forms of percent, decimals, and fractions. In this first line, I am given the fraction 9/16. So I want to find the equivalent decimal and the equivalent percent. So let's start with the fraction 9/16. You will take your calculator, type in 9 divided by 16. You get your decimal, which would be 0.5625, and my little marker here is good enough to write in, but not good enough to take. So let me switch to another green marker. So that's 0.5625. And then we want to move that decimal. So I'm going to come over here, 0.5625. That means that the decimal needs to move over 2 places. So when I move over 2 places, that gives me 56.25%. In the next problem, we're given a decimal of 0.45, or in this case, it probably writes the 0. In most typewritten places, you will see that leading 0, as well as for nurses. Math teachers, we tend to leave it off. I tend to leave it off. So I'm trying to get better at writing that leading 0. So 0.45, to write that as a fraction, that would be 0.45, which would be 45. There are 2 places after the decimal, so that would be a 1 with 2 zeros. That makes that 100, but that does need to be reduced. And so I'm going to use my calculator, lay it down, and then I never can find it. So then I'm going to type in 0.45 math fraction, and that reduces that down to 9/20. In this case, 5 goes into both of those. 5 goes into 45 9 times, and 5 goes into 100 20 times. So that gives me 9/20. Then to write it as a percent, that means I would move the decimal 2 places, 1, 2, and that would give me 45%. In this next problem, I'm given 0.81%. So that does again have that leading 0. And so that would be 0.81%. The decimal would be moved to the left 2 places, and so that would need to add an extra 0, and that would give me 0.0081. Remember that decimal percents are going to give you very small numbers. And then to write that as a fraction, that would be the numbers 81 over a 1. And how many decimal places do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we need to see if that reduces. If 81, which is not prime, has any factors in common with 10,000. So what I would do is take that 0.81 and divide it by 100 to double check that I have the right number of zeros and that I've converted that to a decimal correctly. Then I'm going to hit math, fraction, and enter, and double check. Notice it doesn't help because this number is so small that it won't give us a reduced one. And in this case, 81 is only divisible by 3. 3 and 9. Mine's only divisible by 3. So 10,000 divided by 3 is not an even number, so it is reduced. So that would be 81 over 10,000. Remember, do not put your commas in when you're typing in the computer. It does not understand them, but I will write them when I'm writing on the board or on my paper because it helps us count the number of zeros. And when you're trying to count the number of zeros on a computer screen, it's easier to count them if there's a comma, but don't type them in your computer screen. Okay, the next one we have is 1/3. So that's 1 divided by 3. Notice that that will give us repeating 3s. So if we have repeating 3s, what are we going to do? What's going to happen? Well, those repeating 3s, 1 divided by 3, is going to give us, well, I was going to try to use a different color. That does not going to work. So 1/3 is going to give us 0.333. That's not going to work. Let's just go back to red. 0.33333. Notice in the actual homework problem, it does give us some more information that I did not think to write down. But if you read your homework question on this one, or if you're just listening to this one from other places, we're going to round to 4 decimal places to the nearest 10th, and percents to the nearest, or excuse me, we're going to round decimals to the 4 decimal places and percents to 2 decimal places, which means percents are going to be to the nearest 100th and decimals to the nearest 10,000ths. So if we want 4 decimal places, that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's going to be 4 places. This 3 does not need to round up because the 3 is not 5 or more. So that means this will be 0.3333. And when we move our decimal 2 places, that moves the decimal from between the 0 and the 3, between the 2 3s. And that gives us 33.33%. Now we're left with this last one, which is 6 1/4%. And this is things like you might see in a bank. You know, they're going to charge you 6 1/4% interest. So one of the things that you want to do first is convert that to a decimal, or the 1/4 into a decimal, so that you can write that as a decimal. So I'm going to do that work up here a little bit so that you can see it. So I'm going to take just the 1/4, not the 6 1/4, just the 1/4. So that's going to be 1/4, and we'll do 1 divided by 4 on the calculator, and that's going to give me 0.25. That then gets added to the 6 because it's 6 1/4. So that's 6 plus 1/4. So that's the same. This is the same as 6.25%. 6.25%. To write that as a decimal, then I need to move my decimal back 2 places. That means I need to add 1 0. And so that's going to be 0.0625 with the 0 there, the leading 0. And again, I can take 6.25, divide that by 100 to make sure that I've typed that in and not gone crazy. And then I can convert that to a fraction. And in this case, it will give me a reduced fraction, which is 1/16. And that gives me a nice reduced fraction. And that fills in our table. So this is question 15.